I'm here talking about jazz, not this guy. Cheers, Mazzy here. Happy Mother's Day. This has been recorded on the afternoon of Mother's Day. I miss my mother who adopted me literally after several days, and the mother I never met. So my mother from San Francisco, California, and my birth mother originally from Wheeling, West Virginia, to Ohio, to San Francisco where I was born. So cheers, Mom, and to all the mothers out there, and the mother, Michelle, of my wonderful son, Joseph, and to all the mothers too, all the mothers. I just want to show you some jazz records. Now this, I'm not going to do a deep dive, but we all know how this is one of the golden ages of jazz reissues and archival releases and new music. And in honor, I'm wearing my Jazz Bums t-shirt. Now, if you don't know them, you should. The channel, a ragtag team, I would call them ragtag, I don't know. They're new and old jazz fans. So every Friday, I'll put a link below, every Friday, 5 p.m. Western American time, Pacific, I should say, 8 p.m. Eastern. There's a live stream, and they just it's a hangout. Grab a drink, grab a water, whatever you're disposed to enjoying, and they talk about records. You can join them, and I go there occasionally, and it's just kind of a nice to show new releases. We've got old things, the usual. Just hang out, but it's jazz fans. But the last, again, of course, there's always jazz records coming in, and I just got a batch of several things that I pre-ordered so long ago. But they just shipped. They're from France, that country where they speak French, over in Europe. And one of the great labels, Sam Records, Fred, who is the owner of, he does everything himself, and he gets these great recordings. Some archival, never been released, but some releases that were on of a lot of expatriates, a lot of American jazz artists who were in Europe in the late 50s, early 60s. And the first one I want to show, you got these little wonderful sleeves. This is a 10-inch, and I'm just loving this. I'm digging this. This reminds me, you see these, going back when I was a kid, you'd buy a 45 or an even album, but even the 45s, and you just cherished it, and you'd play that record to death. And these 10 inches, this is one of those 10 inches, some people think, I don't want to bother with a 10-inch, where do I put them? But this is fabulous. And this is a soundtrack of a film by Edouard Molinaro. And if you don't know that director, I did know this film. It's called Un témoin dans la ville. Now, my French is terrible, but you see what it is. And I know the director, not personally, but Edouard Molinaro is a French director, most famous for, at least from in terms of movies that I saw growing up, was in the 80s, I guess, La Cage aux Folles, and of course the sequel to La Cage aux Folles, and of course there was the American version called The Birdcage with Robin Williams. He directed that much later, but this film is, I'd never seen it. I really want to see it now. It's kind of a French noir film about a murder and infidelity, all the good things that noir films are about: murder, infidelity, messing around with someone else's spouse, and just the whole thing, and intrigue and black and white artsy shit from the 1950s, the noir thing. And this is like really prior to the French New Wave that was, happening kind of at a separate thing with the Young Turks like Francois Truffaut. And I digress. I'm talking about other cinema rather than jazz, but this is so good, and I recommend, if you get a chance, to order this Sam Records. I ordered it from the In Groove. You can order directly from Sam Records in French. Please send me your record, please. But Barney Willen on sax, Kenny Clark on it's funny, on battery on drums, Kenny Dorham trumpet, and Paul Revere on bass. That's the Frenchman, I assume. Not that Paul Revere. And of course, the great Duke Jordan on piano, and it's what you'd expect. Some are longer tracks, not super long. Some are very short cues, film cues, and there's 6 tracks, so it feels like a little album. It is a little album. It's a 10-incher, but this is really wonderful. This is one of my favorite things. I've been playing this to death the last 5 days since it arrived. Another, I got 3 Sam records. Another Sam record that I got. You got that noise of those? I'm not really a fan of this type of stick 'em up things. I get why people like them, but it's not my bag. But I leave them in these. At least the Sam stuff. Now, this is wonderful. This is Donald Byrd on trumpet, of course. I'm a fan of Bobby Jaspar. There's been several, in fact, another album of Bobby Jaspar and Donald Byrd on Sam Records, which is wonderful. And this is from 1958. Also on here is Walter Davis, Doug Watkins, and Art Taylor on drums. And it is so good too. It's got a nice vibe to it. There you go, there's Donald Byrd. There's several albums of Donald Byrd. I'm pretty much, he doesn't do many records, so I'm pretty much all in on the Sam record thing. And I think that they're just a great quality, great sound, reasonable for what they are, not crazy, but they got the full back, flip back jack. It's very, very European and very true to the originals. Some of these never came out, remember. Some of these have been, I think they released some records that were originally on the Barclay label in France. So that is a keeper. And this one, oh God, this is a dynamite record. And this is a double record. This is Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers. I saw him in the 70s 3 times. I don't even remember what what other musicians he was playing. He's one of those band leaders that has such a great series of amazing, I don't want to say students, but musicians go through the Jazz Messengers and play with the Jazz Messengers for a short time or long time. But this is Olympia concert, and this is from 1958, in November 1958. This is killer. Now, yes, the drums are loud. They're right up there because it's a drummer leader, but it's powerful. There's some soloing things. There's a magnificent, seriously magnificent, like just thundering version, a wonderful, beautiful thundering version of Moanin', the Bobby Timmons song. And Bobby Timmons plays piano on this. So it's Bobby Timmons, Benny Golson on sax and tenor, Lee Morgan trumpet, Jimmy Merritt on bass, and Art Blakey, of course, the drummer. Double album, just a fantastic, thunderous groove to it. Olympia concert, 1958 on Sam Records. Really good. These 3 are great. I don't really see a release schedule as he kind of puts them out. They come in and out of print. They're not usually limited, but they, get them when you can, and then it might be a year or 2 later before you get them again. This next one, I will say that I am a huge fan of the Analog Productions Prestige series of mono and stereo. They did 25 and 25 years ago. Those things sat forever before the whole vinyl renaissance, and Chad Casson put these out. And I say this is one of the sweet spots, and I applaud Chad for doing these way back when and really sitting on them for a decade or something. But he was able to repress a lot of them, and I did a pre-order. It's seemingly a year ago, and all of a sudden they called me like last week saying, Mr. Maslow, or they emailed me, Mr. Maslow, your credit card is not working. Basically, I think I had a different expiration, the usual stuff. So that's how the last time I pre-ordered these, they just kind of roll out whenever. And Mobley's Message, I think there was, I had in the last few months, a bunch of OJCs coming in and out, coming through my house that I sold through the Dizzy collection. I believe this was one of them. I don't think I listened to it then, but this is a killer. This is a killer. This is probably the last one of my pre-orders. I think I pre-ordered about about a dozen of these Prestige. The wonderful Stoughton jackets, the usual Kevin Gray, I believe. Is it Kevin Gray? I think, yeah. Mastering, and they, well pressed QRP, all the the lingo you need for the audio file. But they're $40, and $40 to me is a sweet spot. And I applaud audio analog production, excuse me, QRP, put these out. And again, once they're gone, they're gone. My guess is, I think Chad Kasem mentioned that this is their last shot at these, because, you know, Kraft Records owns the right to these, and they'll probably do their versions. But if you can get these, and especially this record, Hank Mobley Quintet, with, again, we got Donald Byrd, Dud Watkins, Jackie McLean, Art Taylor, and Barry Harris. Hold on a second. I need to make sure I don't trip over my lips again. Gin, 1 olive, dry. But Mobley's message, and a wonderful, this cooks. This you want to say rocks with jazz, you don't say rocks. You know, there's a groove to this. This cooks. All these records, man. We have a hot weekend up in Seattle now. We're hitting the 80s and 90s, which is, you know, summertime climate change shit. And I blasted these. They're just really feeling good. There's some moody, also sexy music in these records, especially on the soundtrack, the French soundtrack. But there's a real groove to it. So this is like a really wonderful sweet spot. And when was this recorded? My guess is like the late 50s. I don't remember exactly. I don't see it here. But it doesn't matter. It's just great music. Doesn't matter when it was recorded, right? And then, of course, you know, I don't want... we almost now take for granted that every month you're going to get a couple of tone poets, but that's the great thing about Joe Harley and Kevin Gray and Blue Note putting these records out. And Freddie Hubbard, Blues, Spirit. This again, this has a great groove to it. And this has, again, we got Freddie Hubbard, James Spaulding, alto sax, flute, Joe Anderson, Kiane Zawaldian, euphonium. Ooh, that's one. That's cool. That's cool. And you got, and McCoy Tyler piano, Bob Crenshaw bass, and Pete LaRocca on drums. So you get a little of that, I don't know, it's not really a Latin feel to this record. We got something a little different, but Blues Spirit. This was from 1967, so, but it's a really, really good record. Of course, you have the session photos from the Francis Wolff collection, but I'm really digging this one too. So I'd say 90% of the tone poets. I don't go all in. It's not an immediate buy, but it's almost an immediate buy. And when in doubt, you know, I'll grab them when I can. But again, these wonderful packages, but of course, wonderful music. Now this one, I can see this one for some people. Well, I'm a fan of Gil Evans. I don't want to make excuses but Gil Evans, of course, I'm a huge fan of his collaborations with Miles Davis, obviously with Sketches of Spain, and I mean, there's actually a great the Metal Spine series on compact disc of Miles. There's a Gil Evans years or the projects they work together, and Gil Evans Orchestra, an arranger, composer, just, you know, he wrote so many themes and scores, motion pictures as well. And this is from, what year is this from? This is from 1959. I love this. Now, out of these two, again, it shouldn't be a competition because they're nothing alike musically. But I love this sort of, you know, mid-sized big band, little big band sound of Gil Evans Orchestra. I love his arrangements. I even like into the 80s, the late 80s, that movie Absolute Beginners, the Julian Temple film where he orchestrated that, and he did that, that song with Sade, but just the instrumentals of that with in that movie that he scored that just beautifully. That's one of his later projects. But Gil Evans Orchestra, I'm not going to even list all the musicians. You got so many wonderful artists on here, and this is, you know, the West Coast cinematic. Just this is really cool. This is cool ass shit from my point of view. I love this. This is, again, one of my favorites in the house now. And lastly, in this little series, I'm keeping it short, but again, from the Acoustic Sound series, where they take things from Impulse Records. the spiritual jazz of Journey in Sachidananda, of course, featuring Pharoah Sanders. This is Alice Coltrane. This is a wonderful spiritual jazz album. Of course, I like Pharoah Sanders on this, and it's one of the more out there things that almost Chad Kasem didn't want you to hear. I'm kidding there. I mean, it's not his bag, and usually his label does his bag, but I think this is a very desirable record. I mean, the original is crazy hard to find in good shape, and this sounds really good. It's not as maybe audiophile as some of the other stuff, but there's an interesting feel to it. It's, of course, Charlie Hayden's on bass, Vishnu Wood on oud, Tulsi on tambura. Like, so it's got the sort of the Indian musicians as well. Rashid Ali on drums, and Majid Jabbar on bells and tambourine. And this is with a collaboration with Acoustic Sounds and Universal Music Group, who owns the rights to these records. We hope they continue with these. They don't seem to be on a regular basis. I mean, it is nice that Tone Poets and the Classics come out like every month, pretty much they schedule to, and everybody else is sort of whenever. But that's the nature of things. In some ways, it's kind of nice, so you're not pressured. And I'm not talking about FOMO. I think, I don't know, at least for me, I'm beyond the FOMO. If I like the music and I'm interested in that, I'll go after it. But this is a cool record. This is probably of all these, this is more challenging for some people if you're not into sort of the Eastern sounds and free jazz and spiritual jazz. But it is an amazing album. Obviously, Alice Coltrane. That's it. So thanks for everything. I really appreciate you all. From the Dizzy Collection, and I'm auditioning this. I remember this. I put this on because I haven't heard it in so many years, and I know I have this reputation of like hitting against Phil Collins, but Hugh Padgham's production on this, that drum sounds friggin' amazing. It is. But every time I hear this, I can't help but thinking about Miami Vice, and I can't help. And that's sort of, I don't know if that ruins it for me. Miami Vice was a great thing. I love Michael Mann, who created that show. Again, I'm digressing, but to me, cinema, television, music, it all kind of overlaps and goes together, as it should, in my opinion. So cheers, Mazzy loves you. We'll see you later in the week.